Here with Nick Roush at Kentucky Sports Radio. We just talked to Deion Walker, who
big guy,
massive,
enormous human.
I mean, you're an enormous human, and he's more enormous than you.
It's one of my proudest pictures is being able to stand next to him and not look tiny
and feel like a child.
He's massive and he is movable, but the motor is really what sets him apart.
Well, and the ability to rush off the edge at that size. I don't know that people who have not played football truly understand how difficult it is at that size to be quick enough to deal with offensive tackles and people chipping you. But he can do that when they need him to, and then they can also move him back inside.
Well, and people forget about this play in this game because Ray Davis ran for 280 yards. But the game against Florida last year really broke when Deion dropped back into pass coverage and split somebody in half on a zone blitz, and Kentucky picks it off, and they're in the red zone, and it was all she wrote after that.
It's just incredible. And so Deion told us, and because my thinking on this has been, there probably has been no player more tampered with in the past 2 years than Deion Walker, because like we said, people like that don't exist in real life. Correct. And so everybody needs one.
Oh, you look at the spring portal and how people were overpaying for interior defensive linemen. It's
I'm not
a very important
specify
position.
Schools and accuse people because I don't know, but I can just tell you everybody who's competing for the national championship would take Deion Walker and start him immediately over whoever they have.
Every single one. Yeah. And I think what adds some validity to your point too is that nobody thought they could get Jordan Davis from Georgia because he's at Georgia, right?
Right.
But I bet people think that, like, well, Kentucky doesn't have the money. We can outspend them.
So Deion told us that it was actually touch and go for a few hours after the Louisville game, because remember, Mark Stoops was talking to Texas A&M.
Yeah.
And he said that it wasn't until that night when he heard from Mark Stoops that he's staying that Deion's like, okay, I'm here too.
That's remarkable because we knew how tenuous that moment was, but he's never gone on record to talk about being tampered with. I'm not surprised, like you said, but that is it makes, you know what else should make Kentucky fans very happy is that I'm pretty sure Deion Walker was the first person Mark Stoops told he was staying at Kentucky.
That's the first person I would tell.
Deion, but yes, I'll be here. You be here too. Stay, please.
But so that whole episode is fascinating, and the fact that, you know, they could have done a lot of things with SEC Media Days in the schedule. Like you could have put Texas and A&M on the same day or put Texas and Oklahoma on the same day.
Right.
But having Kentucky and A&M on the same day, I'm sure they didn't even think about it.
Right. No, of course not.
But how weird is that?
It is
that
weird.
It was really probably a few Texas A&M regents.
I mean, it's Ross
away
Bjork,
from being very different.
If he checks a couple more boxes before and doesn't get ahead of his skis.
Yeah.
I mean, now I still had a part in me. It was kind of like John Calipari going to Arkansas.
Right.
Where all the smoke and the steam is there, but you can't really believe that he's going to go through with it and do it until he does. And that's kind of how I was with Stoops, where it's like, but does he really want, like, I mean, he is Kentucky, and closer to home where I'm in the city of Louisville, it was kind of like Charlie Strong going to Texas, where you're like, you've got this great thing going here. Like, do you want to, and it's even much more different for Stoops, where Stoops is, I mean, he's like statue guy right now.
Right,
Kentucky.
right.
I mean, he is
when
Kentucky
Charlie
football.
Strong went to Texas, remember, Texas was 8 years removed from a national title and 4 years removed from playing for a national title. A&M ain't that.
No, they're. Hey, maybe we'll go to the playoff. Like, that would be good. What was it, 98 was their last conference championship?
They won the Big 12 in 98, correct.
And I think that might have even been a share of it as well. So
different. They had a championship game, so they did win it.
Okay. All right. But nevertheless, like that, making that jump, it's something that we talked about a lot. You wondered, is Stoops going to go? Iowa has always loomed out there, but now, I mean, he's navigated Kentucky and got them to a spot where they're in an SEC with 16 teams, and you feel like they're on solid footing, which is just remarkable to say if you look at Kentucky's history over the years, because Stoops his message today is, hey, you know, I'm unsatisfied. Like the last couple of years weren't great, but going to 8 straight bowl games at Kentucky is not nothing, which is true. The floor has been raised in Lexington.
But that's where I compare Stoops at Kentucky a little bit to Steve Spurrier at South Carolina, where Steve Spurrier raised their level of expectations so high that it was actually not sustainable because it was South Carolina.
That's true.
So here's my question to you, because Stoops has raised the level of expectations at Kentucky to an extraordinary degree. They are so much better than they were when he took over. But does the flirtation with Texas A&M now make it where the fan base goes, okay, but now you got to do better than that?
I think it was going to be there regardless, Andy, because we had those 9.
So maybe that's why you do that. Maybe that's why you had that flirtation, because you reset the clock.
Exactly. But if you want to answer the question, can Kentucky get back to 9, 10-win seasons? Can they go to a playoff? I mean, we don't have to make big takes about it. You can just say, hey, Brock Vandagriff, former 5-star top 25 overall player. That's their ceiling, because the rest of the roster is pretty loaded. You got 4 out of your 5 offensive linemen returning. The defensive line, best run defense.
Couple really explosive wide receivers.
And they are
new running back who's pretty damn good.
They've been very hesitant to pump up Brock Vandagriff, say anything good or bad or indifferent. But if you look at 2 other quarterbacks that are 2 of the best in the league this year, you can see the guy he was behind in Carson Beck. People thought maybe Brock should have been that guy instead of Beck. Beck has some learning lessons at Auburn, and then he's a first-round draft pick against Kentucky, right? Brady Cook, I think, is the Brady Cook story from a year ago, especially their skill set, because Cook has the legs. Where Vandergriff's got some talent around him. Barion Brown, very fast. If you're playing that video game, he's the fastest guy you'll play with on there. So he has some tools. Brock doesn't need to do everything, but he can raise their ceiling to where they could legitimately, we could be looking at that Texas game, Andy, in the second to last week of the season to say, is this for a spot in the playoff? It could happen.
That would be incredible. Now, the Brock Vandagriff story, and Kentucky fans, I'm sure, have gone deep into this and understand it. But for those who aren't Kentucky or Georgia fans or Oklahoma fans, because they'll know about this too. Lincoln Riley had identified Brock Vandagriff as his guy for the class of 2021.
Correct.
And for those who don't know how Lincoln Riley recruits quarterbacks, it's actually a pretty noble way to do it. Like, he picks a guy, that's his guy, and he doesn't pull the I'm offering 2 and the first one who takes it gets it. When he picks his guy, that's who he's recruiting. Even if that person hasn't committed yet, that's who he wants. He's not going after anybody else. Brock Vandagriff was that guy. He commits to Oklahoma. Only when he decommitted so that he could go to Georgia, which was right next to home.
He's from Prince Avenue. It's 20 minutes away. And what changed his mind too, Andy, it was going to Thanksgiving and his grandma saying, well, this will be our last Thanksgiving for a while. And so that could be your sliding doors moment, because
Caleb Williams is the person that Lincoln Riley then goes and gets. So given the chance to recruit all these guys, Lincoln Riley actually was targeting Brock Vandagriff before Caleb Williams.
So Kentucky got Caleb Williams is what you're telling me.
Well, no, because I think Caleb Williams would have beat out Stetson Bennett and Carson Beck at Georgia.
That's fair enough. But that potential was there and stirring. And when you talk to people at Georgia, he's got the physical stuff. It's the processing, and he just needs the reps.
Which is what Carson Beck needed before he became what Carson Beck is now.
And here is another, we're at SEC Media Days. Let's dream big. Let's talk big.
Go for it.
I don't like doing this because Kentucky fans, we've done this quite a bit with close calls at Georgia over the years. But think about this. Beck needed some of that adversity at Auburn to learn. Can't you see a scenario where South Carolina comes to town and they've got Lenora Sellers and it's
another quarterback, by the way, who if they hit their ceiling, changes everything for that team.
So you could see a scenario where, it's the first big game. Brock throws an early interception, but Kentucky's matches up well with them. So they probably, come back and they win the game by, 2 or 3 scores or something like that. But can't you see a scenario?
Confidence here.
Can't you see a scenario, Andy, where Kentucky's 2 leaders on the offense and defense, and this isn't to discount Deion or any of the other guys, but couldn't you see a scenario where Pop Dumas Johnson, the Georgia linebacker, Brock Vandagriff, the former Georgia quarterback, what if to beat Georgia you had to go and get them? You had to go. I'm not saying they could, but can you see a third quarter?
Can I be the pea in your Cheerios devil's advocate?
Just imagine a third quarter.
If they were starting at Georgia, they'd still be at Georgia, right?
There's game pressure. Georgia's feeling it. There's guys and there's people down in Marietta who are screaming I knew we should have gotten Brock. I knew Brock was better than Beck. You're right, though. You're right. And the thing that sucks for a guy like Pop Dumas Johnson, the dude was All-American, but he breaks
it's not his fault.
The guy behind him is just from Georgia and is also going to be an All-American.
Yes, exactly.
That's why we're dreaming big here, right? We're just dreaming big.
I mean, that you're talking about week 3
early,
and this is the thing that I've enjoyed the most about this SEC Media Days. I don't think anybody said anything particularly interesting other than what Deion said to us. That was pretty interesting.
And maybe Nick Saban just being Nick Saban.
But coming up with these scenarios for these games that maybe you haven't given much thought to.
Right. You're thinking about A&M and Texas.
Right. Like that game, if it works out that way, let's say Kentucky beats South Carolina week 2, Georgia comes in, and that game's tight at halftime. The whole country's tuning over to that game.
It's the first SEC on ABC between 2 SEC teams, right? And you have that game. There's another one too, Andy, later on the season.
Wisconsin's that day too, by the way.
Auburn coming to Lexington. Hugh Freeze.
Auburn has so many of these games, by the way.
Right.
Yes.
But like there's a moment where you don't think about it because they have so many of those games. Yeah. But like, what if losing to Kentucky at Kroger Field, it could be between 8-4 and 10-2. I mean, Auburn could be a playoff team,
and that's
right?
that's what I've said about the Auburn-Oklahoma game. So people don't realize that after Auburn plays Oklahoma, which is Oklahoma's first SEC road game, by the way, and Oklahoma plays Texas next. But after Auburn plays Oklahoma, which is their 5th consecutive home game, at Georgia, at Missouri, at Kentucky. That's your whole season right there.
Yeah. So it's fun. This has been a great week. It's been so much fun being here. I've been wearing my stupid cowboy hat everywhere. Stupid.
That is not a stupid cowboy hat.
Beautiful.
It's
tremendous. My wife thinks it's stupid. My kids think it's hilarious.
The Kentucky blue of it all is what makes it amazing.
And I got it at the Derby. Like, is anything more Kentucky than that? Exactly. I don't know. Maybe Mark Stoops winning 9 games this year. That'd be pretty great.
Why 9? Why not 10? Why not make it easy to get into the playoff? Why you got to make it an argument?
We only do 7 and 9. You don't do 8. You don't do 10. That's how we do it at Kentucky.
Strictly odd numbers at Kentucky?
Exactly.
Man, it's going to be so much fun, though.
It is.
It is going to be so much. And to watch Deion Walker, so let's be real. This guy's a top 5 NFL prospect.
Yeah. Like, no bones about it. And he's playing around a bunch of old, big guys on that defensive line. And, I mean, watching defensive tackles, Andy, on a down-and-down basis isn't that much fun. But when you watch Kentucky, just look for 0 because it was the Josh Allen experience back in 2018 where I felt like I was doing my job a disservice because I just got stuck Josh Allen watching.
But it was worth it.
Yeah.
And Josh Allen was the best player on that team. And that was a very good team.
And if you go back to that 2018 season, I mean, that was they were returning similar experience defensively. I mean, you had a known quantity in Benny Snell. That made the big difference for the offense. But these receivers are pretty good. They shake off their sophomore slump. They're explosive.
And then, like, Chip Trainum's
no
shot
joke.
liver here.
Right, exactly.
So,
I mean,
this is going to be very interesting. Very interesting things in Lexington. And, Deion Walker, he is the one you want to watch. I love the 0. On the Giant guys.
It looks good.
Love the 0.
Good. It's the single digits on the defensive lineman too that I like. Kentucky has Octavius Oxendine and he wears 8 because of the double O's. That's just that's so college football. It's beautiful.
Greatest sport in America. Nick Roush, thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.